An entitled Karen sprays everybody down in the pharmacy line with disinfectant, as she claims that she's just trying to avoid any germs in preparation for her surgery. But once she gets confronted for spraying people in the face with disinfectant, this entitled Karen goes crazy and starts making a fuss in such a way that I've never seen before in my life. Here's what happened. So I'm a shift supervisor for a retail pharmacy store chain, and I'm also the manager on duty, and I was dropped right into the middle of this story. So with our pharmacy, and given that it's the end of November, flu season is in full swing, and we have our fair share of customers coughing and sneezing. It's rush hour, and we have a fairly long line in the pharmacy. Well, suddenly, a woman who's the Karen of this story gets out of line, grabs a can of Lysol disinfectant spray off the shelf, and douses each customer in the spray. This Karen then makes her way to the front of the line, where she was originally supposed to go next, just to pick up her prescription. Well, a customer who we'll call John, that's not his real name, confronts this Karen first, telling her to knock it off, then confronts the Karen and tells her to get in the back of the line. Well, this entitled Karen screams at John to pick on someone his own size and leave a tiny woman like her who's about to have heart surgery alone. Karen is about 5 feet tall and maybe 100 pounds, and John is 6'3" and at least 250 pounds. Now, this is when the pharmacy calls me over to handle the situation. The first thing I notice when I get there is a smell that I can't identify. This Karen then yells at John to go fight her husband in the parking lot, stating that he'll beat John into a pulp. Then an old man about 5'5" shows up, telling this Karen to just get her prescription so they can get out of there. And at this point, I'm assuming that's her husband. So I take this opportunity to ask John what's going on. John, along with several other customers, tell me exactly what happened. I mean, there's a smell of Lysol disinfectant spray everywhere now. John apologizes to me, stating he just wanted Karen to knock it off and that he didn't mean to escalate the situation. I quietly tell the customers that I think she's crazy, but her husband seems to have her under control, so let's just get them out of here as soon as possible. Then the entitled Karen slams the can of Lysol on the counter, saying that she's not paying for it. So at this point, I confront the Karen, saying that she took it off the shelf and she damaged it, so now she has to pay for the damage. This Karen then screams that she's about to have heart surgery and she can't have any kind of germs. So I tell her that gives her no right to assault customers and damage the product. Now, at first, as you can probably guess, she demands my manager. But when I tell her I'm the manager on duty, she demands my name and business card to try and get me fired. The Karen's husband calms her down and says he'll call corporate in the morning to ask what the policy is. Karen gets her prescription and the Lysol and walks out with her husband, cursing and screaming the entire time. And this was more like her husband was trying to get her out as quickly as possible. I talk to the customers, and a few of them crack a joke that they are all sanitized, with one of them bringing up that it sounds like this Karen might have dementia or Alzheimer's. A few minutes later, I'm in the vitamin aisle, and as I'm stocking shelves, this Karen's husband actually walks up to me and asks me where certain vitamins are at, and he's talking to me like the previous events never happened. Now, it's been 2 days since all of this went down, and it's pretty clear to me that he never called corporate. Wow, I cannot believe that the Karen's husband actually went back into the store. Like, I don't know about you, but if my spouse was acting like that inside of a pharmacy, I would not want to show my face there ever again. I'd be freaking out. I'd be like, okay, let's not go back in. Like, I don't care what kind of vitamins you need, I don't want to go in there because you've embarrassed me. Like, first of all, that Karen actually started spraying people down with disinfectant. Does she not know how dangerous that could be for certain people? Like, some people might have like a really serious allergy to that, or they might have asthma and that could trigger like an attack of some kind. Like, that seriously could have been very bad. So the fact that this weird, crazy lady was spraying that all over the place is really insane. But with all that in mind, I really feel bad for the husband in this story. He's got to live with this lady, let alone put up with her garbage. I mean, I seriously can't imagine putting up with that on a daily basis, because that lady sounds unhinged. And here's the thing, if she really was having heart surgery, then she really should have had her husband go in there and get the medication for her. If she was really that worried about any kind of germs, she should have stayed in the car. It also blows my mind that the rest of the people didn't file like an assault charge with the police against this lady. Like, if I was in that line and some idiot was spraying Lysol in my face, I would be the first one calling the police. That is definitely not going to happen on my watch. So hopefully, for the sake of your store and everybody who works there, that entitled Karen never comes back, because the way she was acting was so uncalled for, and no one in that store deserved to be treated that way in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, So go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled mother called me a mistake as a child and made my childhood an absolute nightmare. But after years of dealing with this and trying to make my own life out of the mess she made, I finally can say that I'm better off without her, and I truly feel like I'm a stronger person after all that I've been through. Here's what happened. So I need to start off by saying that I was an accident. The doctor told my mother she'll never have kids, and then I suddenly came along. My dad was young, and she was about 6 years older than him. After I was born, she actually had something to do with me. That was until she met her now current husband. She tried to tell me that he was my biological dad and kept pressuring me at 2 years old that he was in fact my father. And this is right when, at the same time, my biological dad had visitations every other weekend, but she claimed that he was just a friend. Well, he eventually told me exactly what's going on, and my mother was livid. 2 years later, she had another kid who's my half-brother, and that's when her manipulation really kicked off. At 4 years old, I was changing diapers and getting my brother dressed, even waking up in the middle of the night when he cried to make him bottles. I was potty training, doing formula, diaper changing, etc. It was all literally up to me. She told me that this was normal and that older brothers are supposed to set an example. Meanwhile, I was off and on seeing my dad every other weekend. She hated it and would tell me that he wasn't coming to pick me up or that he simply didn't care, when in reality, he would call to ask to have me on his weekend and she would flat out say no, even going as far as to take me to the meetup spot that was more of a drive for my dad than it was for her, just to prove to me that he wasn't coming. This continued for several years. I'd take care of my brother, started doing small chores that led to full-on cleaning the house, and then she got pregnant again and the cycle restarted. Now, my second brother wasn't so bad, not as bad as my first one, but I hate to say it, I started to loathe the both of them, because while they had brand new shoes and clothing, I got hand-me-downs and wore shoes that the soles were falling apart. I literally had to duct tape them together just so that I could walk in them. Fast forward to when I was about 14 years old, and it was right about then that I had finally had enough. At this time, I had swapped custody between my biological mother and my dad because of issues that my mother was causing, such as moving out of state, which at the time was against court order, and my dad had made a mistake, which had been resolved by this point. I mean, nobody's perfect. At the time, I was in homeschool, failing literally every class, because my public school had sent me to the hospital because although she was a stay-at-home mother, she was unreachable, and it was assumed that I had gone to school with appendicitis. I attempted to tell her before I went to school that I didn't feel good, but she said I was faking it, resulting in me staying in the hospital for 8 hours by myself until I convinced the nurse and the doctor to contact my school counselor so I could go home. At this point, my eyes had finally opened to the situation, and I finally told my dad I wanted to come home and start fighting with my biological mother because I simply had had enough. She would then call my dad and ask him if he wanted me, as if I was just property to her. Needless to say, he did say yes, and after a long, awkward 2 weeks, I was shipped on a plane headed towards East. My dad had actually moved states as well. Well, long story short, I finally came to where I call home. I got my grades up and I graduated. My dad remarried to this awesome woman who, although is my stepmother, I just call her mom. And when it comes to my biological mother, well, nobody's heard anything more than a happy birthday, and eventually I got nothing at all. And I can finally say after 10 years, I'm doing a lot better. And no, it wasn't one of those situations where they all ride into the sunset happily ever after, because those stories don't exist. We had our ups and downs just like any normal person, but overall it was way better than all the garbage I was in. I realized recently that I may have residual problems when an innocent event made me flinch and take me back to when I was a kid that was all due to my mother. So I decided to start therapy, and after talking to a friend, they said that maybe I should post it online. But I did want to end this story with a message I have learned from all of this. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, and no matter what you go through, you will always find a way to grow and strengthen yourself, even when you feel weak. Because after all, even black sheep's wool is found useful in some other aspects. Wow, what an awful situation that you grew up in. First of all, I want to say full-heartedly that you are not a mistake. You didn't do anything wrong, and honestly, the way your mom treated you is so inappropriate. She made your life a living nightmare, and she literally, at the age of 4 years old, had you changing diapers for your brother because she was too lazy to take care of them herself. That is so unfair to you, and I'm so sorry you had to put up with that. But thankfully, your dad was able to get you out of that environment, and you were able to fight tooth and nail to stay away from that woman. And hopefully you never have to deal with her ever again. Am I the jerk for asking my fiancé to skip this year's Christmas family vacation, all because our baby is due? Here's what happened. So for a bit of context, I have gone to Florida with his family for the past 5 years for at least part of Christmas. And every other year, I return before him to spend Christmas Day with my family. This year is the first time in a long time that all the other siblings are able to overlap dates. My fiancé has major fear of missing out, which is why this is a sensitive subject. His parents have always been weird about keeping their family close. They've never said it outright, but little things suggest they don't consider me completely part of their family yet, since we still aren't married. Also, my parents are away overseas dealing with a grandparent emergency. My mom has been kept in the loop though, and is trying to come back as soon as she can. Now, my fiancé and I are expecting our first baby due December 30th. His family has a vacation home in Florida, and they have gone every single year during the holidays for about a month until New Year's. He agreed not to go this year because of the baby, but his family is insisting that he should go, and that he can come back on the 28th, which according to them is ample time before the baby is due. So he bought a ticket for December 15th through the 28th. His reasoning is that his parents really want him there, and his siblings will also be going. Well, this is bothering me a lot, more than I thought, because I know pregnancies are unpredictable, especially when it's in the last trimester, and if anything happens leading up to the due date, I need him there. My parents are away until December 26th, and my friends have their family, so I will be completely alone. Now, the other reason, and I guess it is more selfish, is that I will be spending Christmas by myself. It's not the main reason why I'm bothered, but it's a small part of it. He's been spending Christmas every year in Florida since he was 15 years old, and there will be many more trips after the baby is born, so I just don't know why he has to go this year. Anytime I bring it up, it results in a very uncomfortable fight about my expectations to put me first rather than his parents, so I don't even bring it up anymore. His parents have always been kind to me, but they also don't see any problems, so I think I'm going crazy here. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Your husband and his family are being incredibly selfish. I can't believe that your husband is going to let you spend Christmas by yourself, but would also be willing to gamble you giving birth by yourself. Like seriously, that's insane to me, and that's not okay. Like he's a complete fool if he decides to go ahead and go to Florida. And the original poster has it right. You have no idea if that baby is going to be early, on time, or late. And the fact that he can't understand that, and that the other people in his family aren't willing to admit that, is really disturbing to me. I mean, never mind the fact that you're going to spend Christmas by yourself, but there's also a chance you could give birth by yourself as well. I don't know about you, but if I was in your shoes, I would be super upset. Like that's uncalled for, and he seriously needs to be there for your first baby. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I think your husband and his family are incredibly selfish, and the fact that they would just push you aside as if your situation isn't nearly as important as their stupid trip, in my opinion, is absolutely insane. My girlfriend said that I'm being unreasonable for not agreeing to let her use the living room when she's working, and I'm honestly so frustrated over this situation, I now seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I live with my girlfriend, and we both now work from home. We live in a 3-bedroom apartment, so we turn the 2 spare bedrooms into offices for both of us to work in. Well, my girlfriend started using the living room instead, since she prefers sitting on the sofa. This initially wasn't a problem for me, but then one day, my girlfriend actually asked me if I could not come into the living room during my lunch break since she had a meeting. Now, she said it was a one-off meeting, so I said that's fine, as long as it's not a regular occurrence. Next week, she asked the same thing and says a regular meeting has been set up for Wednesdays around lunchtime. I just tell her that I'm not really willing to be kicked out of the living and dining room area once a week, since that means me either sitting in my office throughout lunch, which I don't like to do since it's nice to get out of there for an hour or two, or just standing in the kitchen and eating my food. I told her for the meeting she'll need to start using her office if she doesn't want me in the room, since I'm not being banned from my living room. She said I was being unfair since it was only once a week, but I disagreed and said I was being completely reasonable. The living room is a shared space. Her office is specifically for her to work in. I have a week off of work coming up next week, and my girlfriend asked me about what I had planned, and I said I would be seeing friends and families for a day or two, and that I was planning to spend a couple days just relaxing at home. She then mentioned that she would be working in the living room, so so I wouldn't really be able to use it. But I just told her that she can't ban me from the living room during all work hours just because she doesn't want to use her office. I then said that she is more than welcome to use the living room, but she will have to accept the TV being on, and that if she wants it to be silent and quiet, she'll have to go into her office. She said that I was being unfair since I know she likes to work in the living room, but I just said that doesn't matter, since her choosing to work there shouldn't mean I'm banned from a shared space. Honestly, I'm so frustrated over this, I now seriously don't know what to do. You are not being unreasonable in the slightest. Like, I personally think you're handling this exactly how I would. Your girlfriend's being really weird here. She's acting like this space is hers to use to work in, but in reality, she has an office space specifically for that. So for her to like stake a claim over the living room and be like, no, I work in this space, like that's really weird to me, and that just doesn't make any sense. If she really likes to work on the sofa, then I'm sure you guys could like buy a sofa and put it in her office, or something like that where she could be comfortable. But for her to take over this space and be like, no, you can't be in here because I'm working, especially with an already established office that you could be working in, that in my opinion is insane, and there's no good excuse for that. So personally, I don't think you're doing anything wrong, and if anything, I think your girlfriend is being completely unreasonable, because the original poster is right. She can't just suddenly say, oh, I'm taking over this shared space, because that, in my opinion, is completely unfair. Am I the jerk for boycotting my sister's wedding after she made false accusations against my wife, basically claiming that she is a fraud? Here's what happened. So I'm a 35-year-old male, and I come from an intellectually pretentious family. I'm married into a very blue-collar family, and throughout my adult life, my older sister has always disapproved of my partners. I met my wife when she was in college and I was in the Navy. My sister immediately disliked the bubbly and unfiltered college girl and determined my future wife was untrustworthy and dragging me down. Now, 4 years ago, my wife suffered a traumatic brain injury. It occurred right around the time we conceived our second child, so we chalked off the dizziness, headaches, and other symptoms to her pregnancy. Nearly a year postpartum, the symptoms had not improved, and she started scheduling medical appointments to get checked out. Now, at this point, she was in the Navy. I was separated and in grad school. Over the next 18 or so months, my wife endured an endless slog of appointments, tests, exams, as well as what would be an endless amount of tests and consultations, until it was finally determined that my wife has a very rare neurological condition that, to be honest, I don't fully understand. She was medically retired and classified as a disabled vet. During this whole process, my sister's way of being supportive was to tell me it's probably nothing and not to worry about it. Well, this past weekend, I was chatting with my sister. My wife had gotten a holiday job helping deliver packages, but called out on Black Friday to stay at her parents' longer. My sister made a comment about my wife, saying that she's suddenly sick when she doesn't feel like working, and claimed that my wife had done the same thing to get medically retired from the Navy. Now, as is the habit in my family, I replied with equally snarky jabs, reminding my sister, who is a nephrologist, that my wife injured her head, not her kidneys, and she doesn't know what she's talking about. My sister claimed that it took too long because my wife was doctor shopping for the diagnosis she wanted. I then said that if I got paid what she did to sit in an office and say, keep doing dialysis, I wouldn't have personal days either. Now, I had confronted my sister and my mother in the past about their accusations that my wife was milking the system and that she just needed to suck it up. Well, after some very heated exchanges, they had gotten better about keeping their thoughts to themselves, but this one pulled no punches. My sister is getting married in September, and I told her that unless she apologizes and admits she doesn't know anything about my wife's medical history, then we won't be in attendance. So honestly, is boycotting my only sibling's wedding an overreaction? Am I the jerk for choosing the wedding as the event not to attend when it is such an important day to her? What should I do? I don't know. I can see both sides of this. First and foremost, the way your sister and mom are treating your wife is so uncalled for. Like, seriously, why would you make that kind of assumption about anybody? That is seriously so messed up. Because you know what? If your sister was in your wife's shoes, I'm sure she would be very upset about somebody making false accusations about her. I mean, just think about what she's saying. She's saying that the original poster's wife only did this to try and get out of working, and that she only found the right doctor to get a good diagnosis so that she could retire from the Navy. Like, that is such an awful thing to say to somebody, and there's no good excuse for that. Now, on the other hand, it does seem like you're only saying I'm not coming to your wedding because it is her wedding. Now, don't get me wrong, I would probably do the same thing, especially if this is like such a consistent issue in your life. Like, it sounds sounds like she makes these kind of snide remarks about everything all the time, and that's incredibly inappropriate. There's nothing okay about that. So with that in mind, I don't think you would be completely the jerk. I think there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of hurt feelings. And overall, regardless of what happens, I really think your sister absolutely should apologize. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.